Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to my 2004 Jaguar XK8. So as the Esprit restoration continues, I thought I should get out really in the XK8 and actually feel what it's like to drive a car, because as good as rust and flayed skin is, I felt like I needed a bit of a break from the restoration today and just needed to hear an engine running. So we're out today on a bit of a drive, and being based in Surrey, I live in Redhill. There's a little bit of a loop which I wanted to try out, which sounds a bit dreary because all we're doing is driving over to Dorking on the A25 and then turning south onto the A24 and then looping back via Ockley in that kind of area, I think on the Bognor Road, I think it's called, before heading back home again. And the reason for doing this is that I wanted to sort of talk a bit about what it's like to drive the XK8 and what makes it either a good drive or whether it's sporty, whether it's relaxed, etc, etc. And because this road starts off as more or less sort of A roads, and then it goes into a faster section, more like a motorway but still very much an A road, and then turns a bit more twisty before coming back, I think it's a good set of roads to try and put it through its paces, so to speak. So just heading through Reigate now, and you'll join me in a minute where we're just a bit further along on some more interesting roads. So we're just coming into Dorking now, and from the direction I'm coming from, we're taking a left onto the A24 towards Horsham, and this roundabout is famous for having a big silver cockerel on it. I don't know why. But up this hill towards Horsham on the A24 is the start of the faster section of the road. So just over the top of this hill, you get to a roundabout, and then it goes into more or less a dual carriageway from there. And it's the faster sections of road where the XK8 feels very much more at home than it does on the more twisty roads. So extras fitted to some cars, such as cruise control, make faster roads a breeze. You know, you can just put the cruise control on, and later cars like mine have the option of the radar guided cruise control, which will slow down the car if the car in front slows down, and speed up if the car speeds up to a limit. The other thing that comes with the radar guided cruise control, which is quite handy, is this thing called Forward Alert, and it uses the same hardware, so the same radar type stuff, and instead of governing the speed of the car, what it does is it detects whether there's anything in the road or a car slowing down abruptly or whatever, and it will warn you that there's an obstacle ahead and for you to intervene. So this is quite handy. So if you're on a faster bit of road which isn't a motorway, for example, you don't necessarily want cruise control on, you can put the Forward Alert on, and it will just give you that extra bit of warning if your mind wanders for a moment or whatever. So that's quite nice. It doesn't really work too well in towns because there's too much going on. It gets a bit confused and it'll warn you a bit too often. It'll get annoying. But quieter roads, it's fine. So just getting onto the dual carriageway bit now. Still a 50 limit. If I get up to 50 or so, then we can put the cruise on. There we go. So this is really what the XK8 is about. Okay, this isn't a motorway, but it's, you know, a main road with more than one lane, and it's really what the XK8 excels at. So just long distance driving in a relaxed manner. It's quiet in here. I mean, my aftermarket exhaust has a bit of a burble to it, so it's a bit louder than the standard car, but generally the cabin is really quiet, really relaxing. And if you don't have the radio on, the loudest thing that you'll have is probably the air conditioning system. So when that's trying to get up to temperature or whatever, that can be a bit loud on the blowers, but that's, you know, to be expected really. And this is kind of an awesome way to travel, because in here it's really well appointed. The leather and the wood, I know I've mentioned it in previous videos, especially when I did my back-to-back comparison with my MGB. The XK8's cabin is one of its, I think, one of the points that mark it out from its competition. So if you compare it to the likes of, say, a BMW, the BMW was very functional and a bit more sort of sporty looking, whereas the XK8 is very much more tapping into the more luxurious side of things. So I guess Mercedes is a bit more like that, kind of more wood and that kind of stuff, but I think the Jag just sort of puts that extra bit on top. Half the stuff might not work as well as a Mercedes or a BMW, but at least it looks nice. And they kind of went away from that style of interior with the generation of XK that came after this one. So it was a lot more contemporary looking, and it kind of appealed to a bit more of a younger audience, I think. Which I see why they had to do it. They had to try and get a different customer base. As, you know, the original customers of Jag were sort of getting older or getting different interests or whatever. But I think that's what makes the cars of this era a bit more special, is that they're kind of the last of the sort of old man Jags. And I think sitting in this cabin, you kind of do feel like you're in some sort of well-appointed gentleman's club type of thing, and it's a great place to sit. So if I was going to go long distance, without question I'd choose this car. But from people who have been driving long distances will know it does get a little bit boring after a while, just sitting on a motorway or an A road doing the same speed. So although the Jag excels at this kind of driving, it doesn't really excite you. So what we'll do is we'll motor along here for a bit longer, and if I think of anything I'll talk about it. But essentially what we'll do is we'll fast forward to when the road gets a bit more twisty, and I'll let you know how it performs in I don't know, more challenging environment, I suppose. I suppose the one thing worth mentioning on faster roads is if you've got the sport mode engaged. So on the J-Gate, which is the name of the kind of gear selector down here, there's a button underneath it with an S on it, which is for sport mode. And what this does, it changes the profile of the gearbox to hang on to gears for a bit longer, and I think it locks gears as well, so it gives you a bit more direct drive than like your normal sort of slush box type feeling you get of a slipping clutch. Now this is really good, this mode, and I use it most of the time, but one of the characteristics is that it doesn't select the highest gear. So I think this is the case for both the 5-speed and the 6-speed gearboxes, is that unless you're in cruise control or going over, I think maybe the top of the speed limit of 5th or 4th gear if you've got a 5-speed, then I don't know what I'm doing here. Nearly crashed. Yeah, if you're going over the limit of 5th gear or 4th gear, then it will change up, but normally it won't select the top gear. So if in a 5-speed box it won't select 5th, and in a 6-speed box it won't select 6th. So although this is just kind of a characteristic of sport mode, because you know, if you're being sporty, then you probably won't want to get it into that top gear there. But if you're on a bit of a run on the motorway and you've left it in sport, then you might not get as good fuel economy by being in 4th or 5th rather than the top gear of 5th and 6th. So just something to bear in mind if you've got one of these cars and you keep it in sport mode all the time. So two things happened there. One was that my camera fell off the windscreen because of the suction mount, and the other thing was, as the road got a bit more interesting on the A24, we were stuck behind a VW camper, which, you know, I love VW campers, but they're not great to be stuck behind when you want to get on a bit. But anyway, we kind of reached where I wanted to get to near Horsham, and we're just kind of turning around now and going back in a bit more of a country back road type way. And it's on these roads where I want to kind of talk a bit more about the handling and the sportier side of the XK8. So I think it's appropriate to put it into sports mode, which, as I said, holds onto the gears for a bit longer. But what I tend to do is also use the J-Gate to lock it into gears. I mean, in terms of performance, doesn't give you any extra performance there, but it does give you a bit more of an option to hold on to gears for longer, rather than let it change up. So normally when you kind of come off the throttle a little bit, it will change up into a more appropriate gear to keep the revs down, etc. But sometimes it's quite nice to sort of hold on to a gear and let it sort of ride the revs a bit around a corner, or as you're going along a straight or whatever. And I tend to use second and third the most, because second at the top of the rev range is almost 70 miles an hour, might even be more than 70 miles an hour, which is more than enough for UK roads. But yeah, second and third for most corners on these types of roads is fine. And with my Adamesh exhaust, those gears do sound quite good from the outside as well. They do give a bit of a roar, so hopefully I'll be able to give you a bit of a sound of that as I'm driving along. So here we are then, we're coming up to a corner. I'll put it down into second. It's a left-hander, give it a bit more throttle, and you can hear it. Now third, and yeah, it's quite thrilling. So it does shift this car if you prod it. And one of the things which you have to be careful of is the speed limit, because it does come up pretty quickly. And I'm not talking, you know, fastest car in the world or anything like that, but because of the more subdued nature of this car, you don't realise oftentimes that you are going quite quickly. So it's just something to be wary of. I mean, I've watched it several times, the original Top Gear coverage of this car when it came out in '96, and Clarkson sort of saying that, you know, thought he was doing the speed limit, he looked down and he was doing 150, and you know, I don't really believe that, but it's that level of refinement which definitely gives you a loss of sensation of the speed perhaps. So I think that's a good segue into what this car isn't, and it isn't a sports car, it's a comfortable GT. And because it excels at being a comfortable GT, there are compromises when you start to use it in a more of a sporty nature. So one thing is that cosseted feeling and quietness. You don't feel like it isn't as thrilling as if you were in sort of like, you know, a lightweight sports car or track toy. I mean, you're going to be way more in tune with the road and your surroundings. I mean, I think the convertible might be a bit different, even though you lose the stiffness in a convertible, you get that outside feeling and you're more in tune with your surroundings there. But certainly in the coupe, it's so quiet and so refined that it's just quite calming, really. So the other thing as well is, depending on, I think, probably the tyres that you've chosen for your car, the feedback through the steering wheel isn't that electrifying. So it's quite light, the steering, because it's a comfortable GT car rather than a sports car. It does change direction quite quickly. I mean, it's quite a big, heavy car, this, and I was surprised when I first bought the car that it changed direction as quickly as it did. I mean, the wide tyres help as well, it's got plenty of grip. You do need to kind of give your foot a bit of a stamp on the pedal to actually unstick those rear tyres there. It was worse on the budget tyres that the previous owner had fitted on this car. I think they were Nankangs. They were okay, you know, truth be told. They weren't terrible, but they weren't the grippiest, and there was a bit more sort of road noise and stuff. I use Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tyres on this car, and although the 4S is the one that people rave about in terms of, you know, performance and handling and that sort of thing, the 4 I think suits this car better based on the reviews that I've read, and that's why I chose it, because it's more comfortable tyre and it's less dramatic in wet conditions, which is kind of what you want on a car like this, I think. I mean, you could put you know, the 4S on and probably be about the same. It probably wouldn't be that much different. Maybe slightly better handling in the dry and that kind of stuff. And I think you're probably more likely to get the tail out in the wet if you're into that sort of thing. But I don't think this is the kind of car that you'd do it in. And handling, you know, is fine for what you might probably use this car for. But I wouldn't say that it's, you know, the greatest handling car in the world, because frankly it's too big and heavy, and yeah, it doesn't have a limited slip diff or anything either. So it's fine for GT, but if you want this to be a sports car, then even if you do put better tyres on it, I don't think you'll ever really get there. You're better off with a, you know, more focused car, I think. Like the F-Type, for example, that's more likely to be more like a sports car than it is a GT, probably. although far more expensive. So this road is a bit straighter than I remember, so what I'm going to try and do is find some more twisty stuff, probably not say too much, and then just get some more driving shots of the car, and you'll be able to see how it looks and how it sounds going along those more twisty roads there. That was fun, blasting around some country roads there. So the Jaguar XK8 can be enjoyed in a sporty manner. I'm not saying that you can't have fun in this car, and I frequently do. But if you're after a sports car, then I wouldn't buy the Jaguar XK8. If you're after a comfortable GT that can do sporty things as well, then absolutely, I think the Jaguar XK8 is a brilliant car for that. And not only do you get the awesome V8 engine and the accompanying soundtrack, you also get a car which looks, in my opinion, fairly timeless, so classic design inside and out, and you won't be disappointed. So that's all I'm going to say about driving the XK8, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've got more XK8 videos on my channel, as well as videos on my MGB GT, and like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm doing a Lotus Esprit restoration at the moment as well. So if you're interested in those cars too, then check out my other videos. So until the next time, take care of yourselves. See you later.